Camila crouched on the edge of the rooftop, searching the dark street 2 stories below. The slowly disintegrating brick building across the street was abandoned and silent, the green roof overgrown and wild without the regular tending of residents. Part of the roof had collapsed inward, and the prolific moss had taken advantage, growing over the entire second floor and climbing out broken windows. Even this far away, the fetid scent of standing water collecting inside was enough to make her not want to spend more time here than she absolutely had to. She pulled up the projected screen of her datacom with a gesture and made a note in the patrol log that someone from the parish should mark the building for demolition before it became a breeding ground for mosquitoes in the spring. They did not need another outbreak right now. The last insect-borne plague had finally subsided when the weather turned cooler, and the neighborhood was still reeling. She panned over the quiet street again, letting her eyes unfocus slightly so that movement in the shadows would be more obvious. When nothing drew her attention after another minute, she stood. She used the mostly intact fire escape to return to street level, her eyes drawn to the warren of cracks that had become a flowing creek amid the crumbling concrete. The roads in this area hadn't been regularly maintained since this sinking city stopped being the problem of the United States government. Like the remains of the tall buildings along the skyline, they were a relic of an earlier time, when excess and fossil fuels had brought this planet to the brink of ruin. Around the time that all the rich people had left old Nueva York for safer places farther inland, the people who had remained in the poorer neighborhoods realized that the ones who were fleeing were to blame. All over the world, poorer people in the abandoned areas finally rose up and rallied against the glut of petroleum that was killing them. They stopped working on rigs and refineries, and, most importantly of all, they stopped buying the products. They abandoned the cars and ships of the old world, scavenging the bones of them to forge a new world, one that might actually survive. It hadn't taken long after that for the economies that were based in them to crumble into nothingness, along with the governments that had supported them. She'd just heard a few weeks ago about the scraper that they'd finished in New York, far inland. People just couldn't stop making the same mistakes over and over again. She thought they'd only been reckless enough to do that because they didn't have the constant reminder hovering on the horizon like the folks here did. Dios los bendiga, as her mother would say. With a shake of her head, she turned toward the meetup with the rest of the patrol. Camila hadn't found any sign of demons on her sweep, and she assumed that none of the others had either, or she would have heard about it. She jogged 2 blocks and rounded a corner before she heard the throbbing bass line from the building at the end of the street. She checked the roofs and alleys as she continued toward the source of the music, but didn't find any sign of trouble. Camila was glad to see that the place buttoned up tight despite the fact that there was a block party happening inside. There hadn't been an attack on a gathering of more than a handful of people in years, but it paid to be careful. That was why the children were meeting here at the end of their patrols tonight. Camila climbed 3 stories to the roof of the building next door. On the other side of the roof, Dalia crouched, looking down into the adjacent alley. Clad in dark gray with her hood pulled up, Dalia was so still that if Camila hadn't been looking for her, she might have missed her. Without turning, Dalia signaled that Camila should approach quietly. Camila moved slowly, footfalls absorbed by the well-cropped greenery until she stood even with Dalia's shoulder. Uncharacteristically, Dalia had her gorget buckled and her armored jacket buttoned all the way up, without a stitch of skin showing from her chin to her toes, aside from her fingers. She must have expected a fight any second. That set Camila on high alert. The lights were out in the alley, and more than half of it was cloaked in shadows so deep Camila couldn't see anything. Bad sign.